Dan is a self-employed who works from home. He is a journalist. He has to write to provide for his family. Nonetheless, he generously, without ever expecting any penny, took time from his work and family and put all his efforts into BAFS and A&E, Awazi News Agency, and you cannot do this. But by a true dedicated Democrat and Superman being, as Danny is, to do so consistently and be supportive of Awazi nation. While, unfortunately, I must say, shame on us that, at times, we let Dan down. And we are not, or we were not as generous as he was in allocating time to help translate news, or be timely in providing him with the news to help us. Again, I could go on for days saying and trying to describe Dan's, what he has done for us, the Awazi community in London, for the Awazi movement, and for Awazi nations. I can say without any doubt that practically every successful event, I just want to emphasize here, we have had in London, whether setting up a meeting in the UK Parliament, meeting MPs, or securing a permit for a demonstration, or accessing the media, and so on, Dan was behind it. Yes, Dan was behind it. We, as Awazi, should forever thank and thankful to Daniel Bread. So we are very thankful to Dan. Now, without further ado, please help. We welcome Daniel Bread to the podium. Please welcome Mr. Daniel Bread here.
I'd like to start off by just mentioning what happened in the Netherlands the other day when Said Mousavivi was kidnapped and beaten by agents of the Iranian Republic after he returned home in the evening. He said that during his ordeal, he was stripped naked, videotaped, and tortured with electric shocks. The agents knew about his daily activities and interrogated him about Ahwazi activists who have visited his home. It's incredible that Iranian terror, Iranian oppression is here in the streets of Europe. And Mr. Mousavi is just a poet. So I want to remember another poet, Hassan Sherbani. And an American poet has written a poem about him that I'd just like to read out. Today, we are all Shabani. No capital death sentence for a poet's conviction has been commuted. Instead, by his own voice, for justice, he was executed. From inky windows of an icy prison, accused of helping the Arab minority and waging a war on God in Iran. Today we are all Shabani, for over his pale shoulders, under staggered clouds, in a veil of farewell, on a crude dawn, we heard a call of his name and a bell sound from his anonymity. Survivors may read him to honor his famed poetry. We will freely outlive his cold murderers. Al-Ahwaz is a region of open veins. Everything from the time of Reza Shah's occupation has always been transmuted into Persian capital, and as such has accumulated in a distant center of power, Tehran. Everything, the soil, its fruit, and its mineral-rich depths, the people and their capacity to work, natural resources and human resources, production and the racial class structure have been determined from outside, meshing it with the gearbox of Iranian capitalism and the war machine that protects it. For those Persian chauvinists who see history as a competition, al-Ahwazi's backwardness and poverty are merely the result of the cultural inferiority of its Arab inhabitants. Arabs lost and Persians won. But al-Ahwazi's underdevelopment is an integral part of the history of the development of Iran. Arab defeat has always been implicit in the victory of the despots in Tehran. Al-Ahwazi's wealth has been always generated its poverty by nourishing the prosperity of others, the Persian Empire and its military-industrial elite. Ruin was the fate of the dams on the Karun and Karkeh. Those living in the shadows of the rigs, refinery, and ethylene crackers have become painfully aware of the mortality of wealth that nature bestows and the Persian imperialism appropriates. The gap between Tehran at the center and Al-Ahwaz at the periphery widens ever still. Living standards are in free fall. Infant mortality is soaring. Ahwaz lies in the choking toxic cloud created by the destruction of resources for a war machine, no, a terror machine that oppresses and exploits the indigenous people. Iran's strength necessarily lies in this marginalization of Ahwazi Arabs. This vampire state drains the life from Al-Ahwaz and can only replace it with death. It is a regime of destruction and suicide. Ever more people are left beside the road, without work, without land, without the ability to determine their destiny, without the right to learn in their own tongue. But such contradictions cannot be sustained. The Ahwazi movement is a stone that will shatter the clay feet of the Persian Empire. I want to quote a great Russian anarchist, Peter Kropotkin. When a revolutionary situation arises in a country, before the spirit of revolt is sufficiently awakened in the masses to express itself in violent demonstrations in the street or by rebellions and uprisings, it is through the action that minorities succeed in awakening that feeling of independence and that spirit of audacity without which revolution can come to a head. Men of courage, not satisfied with words, but ever searching for the means to transform them into action. Men of integrity, for whom the act is one with the idea, for whom prison, exile, and death are preferable to a life contrary to their principles. Intrepid souls who know that it is necessary to dare in order to succeed. These are the lonely sentinels who enter the battle long before the masses are sufficiently roused to raise openly the banner of insurrection and to march arms in hand to the conquest of their rights. Some brave young men are cutting the arteries of Persian capitalism, Ahwazi Arab men. I think we should applaud the destruction of those pipelines, police stations, and factories that sustain persecution, exploitation, and domination. Yes, we should celebrate this as legitimate and just. And to finish, I'd like to just quote a poem from Rabindranath Tagore, who was an Indian freedom fighter and a writer. He was a Nobel Prize winner. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father. Let my country awake. Thank you.